Greetings and welcome to another video tutorial on Unity. This one's going to be covering GUI programming in Unity. Now this is not going to be an all-encompassing tutorial. This is designed to be a visual reference to go along with reading the documentation. Documentation can be found easily by searching for Unity GUI tutorial. The Unity GUI scripting guide should be the first link that pops up. It's a fairly small page, but the important part is it gives you the springboards to the rest of the tutorial documents. Unity GUI basics and layout modes are must-reads for my students. Controls and customization are good things to read. And extending Unity GUI and extending Unity Editor will be optionals. We definitely will not get to those into the first programming class. Those will wait until the second programming class if we even get to them then. Other things that you should read is the GUI class in the scripting reference area, so you can see exactly what variables are present and what functions are available. And of course the GUI layout class in the scripting reference area, so you can see what's available inside of that. Alright, that's enough going over the documentation. Let's see how some of this actually looks in the editor. Okay, and we're just using the piggybacking off of the solar demo. So I've got my main camera here, and I am going to attach the GUI demo to it first. Go ahead and run it so we can see what we're looking at, and then we'll talk about the code and how this is working code-wise. This is using fixed layout, and while fixed layout is very good for creating pinpoint precision GUI elements, in other words, I want this exactly right here, it's got some disadvantages to it. The biggest disadvantage is having to manually set everything. So in the case of this box of doom here, if I move the box of doom, nothing else moves with it. It's just the box of doom moving. I would then have to try to manually adjust the label position and the button position to try and keep things matched up. It would also not automatically adjust if I shrink the box. Now, things can get a little bit easier if you are using groups, which is the box of Ultra Doom. If I move the box of Ultra Doom, you notice everything stays together and everything stays centered. Of course, the big disadvantage in the box of doom, as you can see here, the button has the text cut off. So let's talk a little bit about the code as to what's going on here. Starting with the box of doom, this is using fixed positioning, like I mentioned earlier. So I am calling GUI dot and then the control that I want to draw. So dot box for drawing a box, dot label for drawing a label, dot button for drawing a button, so on and so forth. When drawing GUI elements, everything must be done inside an onGUI method. If you call GUI methods anywhere else, they will do nothing. They will only be recognized inside this method here. Pay close attention to the naming on this. The GUI is all capitals. If instead you make a mistake and you use lowercase letters for the U and the I, it will not work. Nothing is showing up now. Code's still there, and I can still tweak my positions, but nothing's going to show up. So if you have a scripting component attached to a game object, the GUI is not showing up, first thing you should check is, did I name my method correctly? There are two parts for most controls that you have to pass in. Some controls have more. And that is, I need to pass in a position, which is a rectangle, which has both the upper left-hand corner and the width and the height. So I'm defining my box here. It's a 5, 5, 400, 200. And then the second part of it is the label for the control. Again, most controls have a label. Not all controls have labels. So here I'm saying, okay, the label for the box should be the box of doom, The label or non-interactive text should be the label of doom, and for the button, I'm calling it the button of doom. Now I have to manually set these sizes to make sure that they give enough room for the control. Notice on the button of Super Mega Ultra Doom, it doesn't fit. It's getting cut off. Fixed layouts will not automatically adjust the size of the controls. The size are whatever you say it is, and then Unity will do its best to display the information inside that control. So, for example, if I take the really long button name here and change it just to a plain old X, that's all it's going to display. But it's not going to adjust the size of the button. The size of the button is still what I set it to. It's a little bit harder to see, as in impossible to see pretty much, on the labels, but the labels are the same way. The labels are however big that I made them. They are not going to adjust the size. The only way you can really see the size in the labels is if I make the label so small that it can't actually fit all the text in, and now it's trying to put it on new lines and stuff like that. And if I shrink the height, it gets, disappears. All right, let me get my label back in here. Okay, now one last thing that I want to comment on the fixed layouts before I move on is buttons. Notice I have this if statement here. I'm saying if GUI.button, and then I'm printing out doom or doom, depending on which button is pressed. And you can see that working. If I come back over to Unity, switch over to the console, you can see as I press the doom button, we get doom showing up from the print statement. Or if I press the Super Mega Ultra Doom button, we get lots of doom. How buttons and some other interactive elements for the GUI system work is that they will return a Boolean value, true or false, depending on whether or not they have been clicked or used or activated or something. So in the case of the buttons, I'm saying, well, if this button has been pressed, print this, is how I would describe it in plain English. If the button is pressed, do this. And by pressed, it's a standard Windows press. Notice if I press down, move my mouse off, release, nothing happens. If I press down, move my mouse over, and release, nothing happens. I have to press down and release while my mouse is over the button. It's the same way that every other application works, which is good because that is what users are familiar with. Alright, so that is fixed layout. Oh, wait, and I forgot the group. Code for the group, all that is a GUI begin group, and I specify a screen coordinate. Now the box, label, and buttons still need their position, they still need their size, but notice a little bit difference here. For the box, I'm drawing it at 0, 0. That obviously can't actually be the screen coordinate 0, 0 because it's down here, clearly not 0, 0. When you have a group in fixed layouts, the group, every control of the group is then drawn relative to the group's position. So I'm not saying draw the absolute coordinate 0, 0. I am saying draw it at 0, 0 relative to wherever I put this group. Same thing for this. The label, I'm drawing it at y of 25, but that's relative to this position. Y of 75, but again, that's relative to this position. So it makes for a really good way of keeping things grouped together, so that way if I want to move this group, all I have to do is worry about moving this position, and everything else inside the group is going to remain fixed. So then that gives me a good situation of, letting the user, say, click and drag to move the inventory window or whatever window this happens to be around on the screen, and I don't leave behind all of my controls. Of course, I don't have that implemented in this. Okay, so that's the lightning fast introduction to fixed controls. Let's take a look at automatic layouts here. So I'm going to remove that component and add in the layout component and set the skin. Okay, so what's a GUI skin? A GUI skin is something that you can use to completely control and customize the appearance of the GUI controls in Unity. You can control what does a box look like, what does a button look like, what fonts am I going to use. You can also specify custom styles. So while maybe you want most buttons to have this emerald green background, but you want the quit button to have a red background, then you can define a custom style and assign the appropriate information to it to control. Say, hey, wait a minute, no, this control I want you to use this style on. The main reason why I'm doing this is to help visualize a little bit better how the layout is assigning areas, because otherwise you can't see it. As far as how I created these little semi-transparent backgrounds here, and they are semi-transparent, which I can demonstrate by dragging my box over here. You can still see the sun through the background there. It's actually pretty simple in that I just simply went into GIMP, created a 32 by 32 pixel box, and then for the color, I'll do black here, is I dragged it towards the white corner here. So I've got a lot of white in the color, so to speak. Filled that in, and then the interesting thing with GIMP is that if you go to colors and say color to alpha, it's a little bit hard to tell with white. Actually, let me go back and do red. So I've got red with a lot of white in it. And I'm going to say fill full selection. There we go. So I've got this nice pale pink here now. So if I go to lit colors, color to alpha, change it to white, you can see now that it's transparent. It basically took all of the whiteness of the image and made that transparent. So I have a vaguely translucent red color here. Just exported that out, brought it into Unity. That's my red background and gray background. Notice that the preview mode does not show it with the transparency information. It will only have that transparency, but you can see the transparency information when you're looking at it in the skin and, of course, while the game is running. And so I set two styles and just simply set the backgrounds to the appropriate color so that way we can see things a little bit better. So that's a skin. There's a lot more to skins than what I'm showing here. Again, go read the documentation. This particular video was not intended to be comprehensive on this. All right. So again, just taking a look here, most things seem to be the same. Notice our labels are perfectly sized, although you can't really see it except for this one here, where we can actually see how large the labels are. And our area here assigned is perfectly sized for this top one. And now this bottom one, I am manually defining an area, which is causing some differences in behavior. But still, everything stays together. If I try and move the box around, the box moves, and more importantly, if I alter the width, the controls alter their width as well. Of course, if you get it too small, then it starts, being not happy with you. And the height as well can be adjusted, but that doesn't really do much. Okay, so that's behavior. Let's see the code. And switching over to GUI Layout Demo. Alright, so this time we're using layouts, or automatic layouts. And how automatic layouts do is you specify whether you want to be stacking things horizontally or vertically. The default is vertical. And then you just begin saying, okay, I want a label, button, box, whatever, and it will automatically size the control according to what it needs to for the current layout mode. So taking a look at the box first, which would be the second area down here, I'm doing a begin and end area. And in the case of areas, I do actually have to specify an absolute screen coordinate and how large it is. It's the only time in automatic layouts, pretty much, that you've really got to do this. So the area, I do have to specify what is my absolute screen coordinate and what is my width and my height, because that's defining the area that I want to do my controls in. This is also where I do the skin custom styles of 0, and over here on the vertical, skin custom styles of 1, where I'm specifying, okay, I want you to use a custom style here. And so mainly so I can see what the backgrounds look like. And then I do a box, I do a label, and I do a button. As we can see from looking over here, that defaults down to vertical. Now, as the title here says, boxes don't work well. They don't, not for automatic layouts. Automatic layout does not like stacking controls on top of other controls, and so boxes don't work as good. For a box, you really need, you're really better off doing something like a fixed layout. You can force them to work in automatic layouts, but it's kind of a pain. If you really need, a box-like effect, you need to do something like set a specific background image, so that way you get a box-like effect. Okay, and then you can see here it just stacks things vertically down. And now, because this is a defined area with a fixed width, it is making the controls as wide as they need to be. You can't really see it with the label, but trust me, this label does actually extend all the way across. Alright, this part up here is nesting vertical and horizontal layouts. Like I said, the default is to stack things vertically, but instead, if you want to stack things horizontally, I can say GUI layout.begin horizontal. Again, the skin here is optional. It is just there to give us the background. We can completely eliminate that and have an empty bracket here. And then I draw out my labels. Again, notice there's no location or width information here. The automatic layout will automatically size and position these. And so since I said horizontal, it stacks them horizontally, or lays them out horizontally, I should say. And now we get down here to the 5, 6, 7, where I nest in a vertical group. The first one's going to be in position horizontally because it's the next available position to put something. And this is still in the horizontal node. So it's still saying, okay, take all of this and slot it into the appropriate spot for the horizontal layout. So that's why label 5 appears correctly in the horizontal listing. But then 6 and 7 are laid out below it because I've specified vertical now. And notice it keeps it in line. Actually, it doesn't bring 6 and 7 all the way over here. It keeps it in line with its starting point here. And then once we're done with the vertical, it just simply resumes back with the horizontal, laying out 8, 9, and 10. And then finally calling end horizontal. Calling these begin and ends is quite important. You always need to make sure that you have a matching end to your begin. So we've got begin vertical, begin horizontal, end horizontal. Same thing for area, begin area, end area. If you leave one of those off, Unity is not going to like you. Notice that since I left off the end there, that box isn't showing, and I'm getting an error here. I am pushing more GUI clips than you are popping. Make sure they are balanced. So in other words, it's warning me. It's like, hey, you forgot an end here. And that is the lightning fast overview of the GUI programming system. Like I said at the beginning, don't try to run off doing GUI programming with just this video. Go read the documentation, experiment around, get a feel for the GUI system. And that concludes this tutorial.